It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. You can also listen to him on the Best Coast Boys podcast. Landon, what is going on, sir?
How much? It's Thursday, so we're about a week out from the draft, and we're still kind of slowly digesting it a little bit and trying to figure out exactly where some of these prospects are going to fit on the team coming up as we get closer to OTAs, maybe? Training camp, definitely, but OTAs, maybe, right?
Yeah, I was getting ready for the show, getting all pumped up, listening to some raps and Boss Man Fat, and I'm all ready to go.
Boy.
Actually, it's not terrible.
It's not. It's not.
I mean, it's not quite as good as Cole Beasley, but it's all right.
Oh, please. So much better than Cole Beasley. Give me a break.
So today we're going to be talking about the three defensive backs that the Cowboys drafted in the 2021 draft. And let's go ahead and start with Boss Man Fat, Kelvin Joseph. The team's pick in the second round at number 44. Landon, you got a chance to go back and watch some of his film. What do you think about Kelvin?
Well, I mean, I like trap music, but it's a little bit derivative of the.
I mean, on the field.
On a football field. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, he's. Look, I think he is. The first thing that I really noticed going back and kind of really watching him was how much of a dog he is, and like in some good ways and some bad ways, right? Everyone's talked about him cheap shotting the I think Auburn wide receiver. The what he did to Kyle Trask was probably worse, honestly. With cheap shotting there. I don't hate that though. I don't hate those. I don't want the penalties, man. I don't want it. But I don't hate guys that don't like the offensive players that want to scrap, that want to fight.
With a little bit of a chip, yeah.
And honestly, this team needs it to a large degree. So I don't necessarily hate that about his game, man. I mean, easy mover is this guy. Like he just is so.
He was born to play
fluid.
The position.
Yep. Absolutely, and just like his hips are so fluid. His feet are incredible. Like he even if he will stop on a double move or something. Like I think I was watching Florida, and maybe it was Kadarius Toney that like tried to get him on a double move, and he bit a little bit, but he was so smooth getting back into position that like he closed the window almost immediately. And I almost wonder, going back and watching, if he was doing it on purpose, like if he was maybe opening the window to try to get to get a throw going that way and only to close it. But yeah, I mean, he's just such an incredible mover. I think, he doesn't have a ton of press man coverage, but I mean, just based on his traits, he's not going to have any problems playing it at all. Like he really has good transitions, really good footwork at the line of scrimmage, so that he, he's not, and he knows he's athletic, which is really helpful when you're close to the line of scrimmage because you're not panicking. No one's going to make him panic. He's already played, Alabama and faced all three of those guys and didn't panic. And those were the best players, and those are the best wide receivers in college football outside of Jamar Chase. So, I think this is a guy who's experienced in the SEC, even though he hasn't started a ton of games. He hasn't played a ton of games. He's played them in the SEC. So he's seen the competition. He's, passed those tests with flying colors. And if anything, I think he's got quite a bit of room still left to go. Like, I think he's still got a lot more upside left to go. And I think he comes in as a guy who already is a very good corner for how little he's played and how young he is.
Who do you think is a better cornerback prospect coming into the NFL between Kelvin Joseph and Travon Diggs? The Cowboys got Diggs at pick 51 last year. They took Joseph at 44 this year.
If I'm just talking tape, right? If we're just looking at tape, I mean, it's tough because I think Joseph doesn't have nearly the experience that Diggs does, and not that Diggs was super experienced, right? I would say that if you're just watching, like, I'll show you 2 games of tape on this guy and 2 games of tape on this guy, I would say maybe Joseph. I mean, just because his abilities are and his natural
he's way more of an athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that there's definitely, if you're looking at who has higher upside, I think there's no question Joseph is probably the higher guy. I mean, I think that Joseph has as high an upside as those other 2, Surtain and Horn, right?
He's just not as consistent enough.
He's just not as consistent. Hasn't played as much football, and then obviously the off whatever you want to call the coaching concerns, the maturity stuff. Yeah, like that adds an element in there. But even with all that, he managed to go in the second round and was by a lot of people a steal in the second round. So that just shows you what kind of talent he is, like, on the field.
I asked a Cowboys source where they had him graded in this draft. Compared to Diggs. And it's funny, Landon, I haven't even shared this with you. They had him at the exact same spot, 1.21 for both Diggs and Kelvin Joseph. So they valued him about the same. I do think the maturity stuff probably knocked Joseph down a tad. And then on top of that, he's just not very experienced. And when you compare that to Diggs, who played a bunch at Alabama, Joseph has just 9 career starts. He had to transfer. He had to sit out for a year. Mm-hmm. There's just a lot of unknowns there. My biggest question for you is, I think the Cowboys' plan here is to have Joseph and Diggs as their outside corners. I think at some point this year, maybe it doesn't happen in week 1, but maybe it does. For the next 2 or 3 years, how do you like that combination of Joseph and Diggs together?
I like it. I think, this is a team. Let's also talk about man versus zone coverage, because there's been a lot of conversation and I just want to frame this properly, right? Like, there's been a lot of conversation, and especially more centered around Nashon Wright, about the Cowboys. McCarthy coming out and saying he wants to play more man coverage, and how this doesn't fit with that and all that. First of all, just to kind of answer the question, I think Joseph is a guy who can give you some good man coverage skills. I think he's a guy that if you needed to feel like you had to put him on a more short, quicker, elusive guy, he can handle that. Yeah, he definitely is can do that.
Terry McLaurin, right? If you need him to follow Terry McLaurin, I feel better about him than Diggs.
His athleticism there, for sure. Yeah. I think that the misconception is that a team that plays a lot of man coverage, or is even a man coverage team, plays more than 50% of man coverage, because they don't. The Saints played the highest rate of man coverage last year, and they played it 47% of the time.
It's because you're going to kill your defensive backs if you do that.
Exactly. You can't do that consistently, snap after snap. The Cowboys last year want to get their rate up closer to what Atlanta had, probably closer to what Dan Quinn was doing last year, right? Yep. The Cowboys last year were at 29%. The Atlanta Falcons were at 33%. So let's not talk about like man coverage as like it's the main thing that's happening. You still need to be extremely good in zone coverage in order to play on this defense. And that's all a long way to say, I think Joseph is one of the guys in this group that is probably the best suited to play both, right? The best suited to play a little bit of man, a little bit of zone. I think Joseph has a ways to go to be a really great zone player, because I think he needs a little bit better eye discipline. He does kind of seemingly get caught at times with that, but that's eminently teachable. That's eminently coachable if he's willing to be coached. So I think that Joseph and Diggs, as they develop over the years, can be quite a good combo, because you can kind of mix and match them and deploy them against the guys that you need to, if you need to do that.
So it sounds like you're pretty comfortable with the pick at 44. Like, it's just the talent's too good to pass up there.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at their need combined with his talent, absolutely. I mean, I think he's a guy that can come in, and you were able to get him at 44. This is basically the Diggs pick redone, right? I mean,
what's really funny though is, and I don't tell me why this makes any sense. They had Tyson Campbell rated lower on their board, yet they were trying to give up multiple third-round picks to go to pick 33 and pick Tyson Campbell.
I think this goes back to the idea that they want players who they feel they can plug in right away. I don't think that they want developmental players as much as we may consider. I think even Wright is a guy that they have a plan for sooner than later. So to me, Campbell is a more is a higher floor player, right? Like,
well, and can we explain why maybe they are looking for plug and play guys? Because I think, and I could be wrong, I think the goal is just not to pay corners, right? And to just use these guys up on the rookie contracts, kind of like what we saw with Byron, like what we saw with Awuzie. Draft these guys, use them for 4 years. If you have to franchise them for a year, that's fine. And let's just move on, because they can't afford to pay everybody. And maybe they feel like in a cover 3 heavy zone scheme, it's just not worth it to pay those guys.
Look, everybody has come around to the idea that offensive line units need to be judged by their weakest piece, right? That it's a team group, and that's the best way to get performance is to make sure that you have a solid group top to bottom. I personally have been saying for a while now that I think defensive backs are the same way. If you have, it's great to have a top guy, but if your second guy is terrible and your third guy is terrible, this is a matchup league. All right. And it's a nickel matchup league, which means you need 3 solid corners out there who can do what you're doing. And to kind of go back to our conversation, you're only playing man like third of your snaps. So you need to play as a cohesive unit in order to defeat pass offenses. So I think it's more important that you have a solid unit of players on, and you're going to need a lot of them. So it's not going to be cheap as overall, but if you try to, I understand the thought process of not necessarily wanting to pay a single cornerback at the top, because it doesn't give you the bang for your buck that you get if you're able to kind of lift the floor of your defensive back group as opposed to trying to extend the ceiling.
All right, we're going to talk about Nashon Wright in just a second, Landon, but I wanted to tell you guys about Nugenix, the #1 selling free testosterone booster, and GNC is offering a complimentary bottle to all football fans in America. It's so simple. All you have to do is text DRAFT to 231-231, text DRAFT to 231-231, and you'll get a free bottle of testosterone booster and testosterone Total T delivered directly into your mail. Again, DRAFT 231-231. And I also want to tell you guys about Bet Online, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. We've got baseball, we've got basketball, UFC action this week. So get onto the website and look at all the latest odds and info for all your sporting needs. Before the next pitch, head over to Bet Online on your laptop or mobile device and check out all the great sporting news, sign-up bonuses, and contest information. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts. All right, let's talk about Nashon Wright, maybe the most surprising pick for the Cowboys at pick 99.
Maybe. Definitely the most surprising.
Definitely. Nashon Wright, just a monster cornerback, 6'0", so he's even taller than 6'4", 183 pounds. Not overly athletic, but he is fairly athletic, 4'7". He had a 10.6 broad jump. There's not a ton of tape out there because he's only played 16 games at Oregon State over the last 2 years. But from the tape that you did see, what did you see about Nashon Wright?
Big, physical. I mean, look, I understand the Richard Sherman comparison simply because he's former wide receiver, still trying to figure out the position. He plays with a physical demeanor that you like. Those are all Richard Sherman things. I don't know if he has, we don't know the player that well yet, so we don't know what his intelligence is like, but that's the other thing that made Richard Sherman who he was. I think that he has, I could understand why he was lower on a lot of people's boards because he's not a fit for everybody. Like he's not going to be a good fit for a team that's trying to match up their corners on an island and play a bunch of man coverage. He is going to be a much more useful player to somebody who can fit him into a zone scheme where he can play with his eyes. He can use that length to kind of deny windows to just make quarterbacks look elsewhere, And I think that former wide receiver skill set really shows in the way he plays the ball. He plays the ball really well in the air. He attacks it at its highest point. I think he's a physical tackler, which is surprising again for a convert at wide receiver. That's usually where you see these guys struggle the most, right? Is trying to just be a physical enough player to play on defense. So he has all of that going for him. The thing he doesn't have going for him necessarily is a ton of experience. Like I said, since he's a convert and since he didn't start a ton of games, he can get lost out there at times. And he does not turn or change direction very well. He's not going to be a guy that you necessarily want, especially in like off man coverage. That's just not the kind of game he has. You want him on the line of scrimmage, knocking the crap out of wide receivers, or you want him side shuffling up the sideline, with his eyes on the quarterback and playing in a silo. And I think if he's doing those things, I think he has a pretty clear path to getting on the field in the NFL with some coaching. If he gets put into disadvantageous positions, I think he can be exposed. I mean, I especially early on while he's still learning. But I do think that you're going to be able to get some snaps out of this guy. It may be in very specific situations early on where exactly what you're going to be putting him out there and what kind of coverage that use, but that's okay. I mean, I think a lot of the times, a lot of these guys, it's not necessarily about surprising teams with coverage. It's about playing the coverage tightly and denying windows and coming after the players with pass rush. And I think in a situation like that, where you've got a pass rush coming after the quarterback and he's got eyes on the quarterback and he can, move, attack towards the ball and react towards the way the quarterback's eyes are going, I think that's the best situation for Wright. And that's likely where you'll see him early often.
For his sake, I hope he doesn't play early on because I think he needs a lot of work. And there's just tools that he has that just not many players in the league have, right? Not many guys are 6'4" and physical like that, but he's 183 pounds.
That's the other part of it.
He legitimately probably needs to gain 20 pounds before he's ready to hold up on the outside, because once he gets into the league against some of these bigger, stronger receivers, even though he's going to tower over them, I think he could get bullied a little bit. Again, the potential and the ceiling is there. I do think he's in a good spot where he's probably not going to have to play, right? Because we just talked about Diggs and Kelvin Joseph. You have Anthony Brown and Jordan Lewis. So at the best case, he's probably your fifth corner. And I actually would venture to guess he's probably further down than that. I think it would be very advantageous for the Cowboys to Reggie Robinson him for a year, right? Just no matter what, we're not playing you. We want you to get stronger. We want you to learn this defense. And then in 2022, let's see what you have.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a great plan. We'll see if that, works out just because of injuries and everything. He probably will end up seeing some snaps. And again, I think as long as you are understanding the player that you're deploying out there, I don't think it'll be, too detrimental. I think you should be okay. But yeah, I definitely don't want to see him in a regular rotation anywhere near the beginning of the season. He definitely has work to do. But I think that, if you're taking a 4-year view of this guy, this is a guy who could potentially be someone who develops into, I think Brandon Browner is the guy that they're probably thinking about, right? Like that kind of physical outside presence who, is he a Pro Bowler? No, but can he give you good snaps opposite of really good player as a guy who can deny the football, as a guy who can play the football, as a physical cornerback? I think he can. Yeah,
your expectations are a little higher than mine. I wrote down Daryl Worley. Like if he could be Daryl Worley in the NFL, that's probably not a bad pick.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that he's going to be Brandon Browner.
No,
but
I know
that's
the hope.
Yeah,
that's the hope.
Yeah.
Just one really quick tangent, because I saw this on Twitter over the last couple of days. A lot of the NFL is going to these smaller receivers, 6 foot and under, and there's this kind of belief now, why aren't the Cowboys finding the guys that can stick with the Asante Samuels and those type of players? And I think the reasoning is when you're playing defense, the goal is to take away as much of the field as possible, right?
Yes.
Right,
yes.
Especially on the outside, because if you're going to be playing this cover 3, defense, you're basically going to be forcing teams to throw the ball underneath or throwing down the sidelines against big cornerbacks, right? You want to make the throwing windows as small as possible. And I think that's why Nashon Wright's appealing to them, because he's so big and so long that really good cornerbacks are going to have to fit balls in the tight windows. And it's just going to be hard for average to even good quarterbacks to do that consistently.
Yeah, and I think there's lots of ways to play defense, right? And I think having guys that can play with their eyes to the football, who will make a quarterback think twice about going that direction, or make them move off to the next. Your pass rush, that extra tick to get to him, and if your pass rush is getting there early and a quarterback is forcing it, now he's throwing it into he's throwing YOLO balls up to a defense that has wide receivers in it as former converts, the guys that can play the football, that are watching the ball, and that suddenly becomes a much more risky proposition, and that's how you increase turnovers. So, I think people get confused because of 7-on-7 camps, because they watch the 1-on-1s in Senior Bowl. That's not how football is actually played. Like it is. There are times when you are isolated 1-on-1 with your wide receiver, and that's the matchup. But more often than not, it's your pass offense versus my pass defense, and not one-on-one matchups. Isolation, that is a thing that teams can try to get your specific defenders into, and you have to have answers for that when they try to do that. But that is not necessarily the holistic way that football is being played. There are matchup issues, and there are matchup players in the NFL, but a lot of times some of the solutions are combination zones, combination coverages, and things that are more holistic with the entire defensive backfield, as opposed to just individual matchups.
All right, so we've got one more player to review, but before we do that, I want to tell you guys about Rock Auto. RockAuto.com is a family business serving auto parts to customers online for over 20 years. They have everything from engine control modules and brake parts, motor oil, and even new carpet. Whether it's for your classic or your daily driver, get everything you need in a few easy clicks delivered directly to your door. The RockAuto.com catalog is unique and remarkably easy to navigate. Quickly see all the parts available for your vehicle and choose the brand, specifications, and prices that you prefer. Best of all, prices at RockAuto.com are always reliably low. Go to RockAuto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com today. All right, Landon, our last prospect that we're going to talk about is a 6th-round pick by the Cowboys, cornerback Israel Mokamu. Mokamu is how you say his last name. I'm really excited about this player because I actually watched him back in March, and I guess I don't understand why he fell this far. So he's 6'4", 212 pounds, so legitimately 30 pounds heavier than Nashon Wright, which is pretty hilarious. He's almost 3 years younger than what Nashon Wright is. Plus, he's got a bunch of experience. He played 31 games in the SEC, starting at safety and at corner, and he actually graded out pretty well over the last 3 years. What did you see from Israel when you watched this tape?
Well, let's go back a little bit, okay?
Sure.
Because first of all, let me explain something with my process. One of the things that I like to do when I watch these guys is I'd like to turn on I'll choose a game that I know the player's in, right? And I'll put it on. Obviously, I know the player and I know what position they're playing. Yeah. But I don't always know what number the player is. I don't check beforehand usually, because what I'd like to do is just put it on and see if I can identify the player, right? Based on their play.
Just watching. Yep.
It took me 2 or 3 snaps before I realized that this wasn't JC Horn that I was watching. This was Muka. So you got to say it for me again, because now I've lost it. Mukamu. That's right. And I had it. And I don't know why it slips from my head a lot. I like this guy a lot, and going back and watching him, I could see why they would want to try him a little bit at safety. I think they should consider maybe keeping him at corner as well, or at least
he's a better corner than Nashon Wright. He just is.
And I think that I agree. And I think that I think he's a guy that really fits what they want to do in so many ways. Like, just his long, athletic. He's a high character kid. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, he was an academic all SEC like 2 years in a row or something like that. So really bright kid. And I sent you an article. I sent it in the DMs last night that a year ago yesterday, There was a paper in South Carolina, I think it was the Palm or something like that was referring to J.C. Horn as the other cornerback on that team. They were talking about how and actually in the article they mentioned that Mel Kiper had rated McComu as a first round pick. So, and that was a year ago. So obviously a ton's changed. But I mean, I think that shows you the thought process of where he was after his 2019 season, right?
Some changed, but like J.C. Horn opted out after a couple games, so it's not like he played a bunch more since then.
No, and McComu did too after they let Muschamp go. So yeah, and I wonder if maybe like part of that. It's interesting because I wonder if maybe part of that got if he took a larger hit than Horn did for them basically doing the same thing. I'm really confused, I guess, after going back and watching this guy, how he fell so far. I think that's where I'm confused.
Well, just like Nashon Wright, he's not for everybody because I don't know of any team in the league other than Cowboys are going to try him at free safety just because I don't think he's a free safety. He doesn't have the change of direction to play safety. But as an outside corner, I really like him, and I encourage everybody to do this today because it's on YouTube. You can watch his game in 2019 against Georgia. He's playing against George Pickens, who was one of the top receivers in next year's class. And I'm telling you, you will not find a better cornerback game than what Izzy did in that one because he had multiple interceptions. He caused multiple other interceptions. He had the game-winning play. He's phenomenal. And I think on the outside – that's where I get really excited because he is so long and he actually has the size to play on that. He's 215 pounds, Landon.
He is. He's a big guy. I mean, there's no way around it. And I think that he plays well with his eyes, and I think that's why they probably want to try him at safety because he's big, he can tackle, he's physical, he reacts well. I can see why they may want to try him there, but I also really encourage that they don't shut the door on corner because I mean the snaps there looked really good. And to the point where, again, I'm saying, how did he get to the 6th round? I understand he's not for everybody. And I understand that this is a deep cornerback class, but this guy really feels like somebody that got overlooked because Joe Horn's son was playing opposite of him. And not that J.C. Horn is not worthy of the top 10 pick. I'm just saying, like, that doesn't J.C. Horn's worthiness of being a top 10 pick shouldn't degrade McComu's ability to play either. His tape was fantastic. Like I really am at a loss.
Do you know who had the most interceptions over the last 2 years between McComu and J.C. Horn?
McComu did. In fact, he had because he had 2 last year, and I think Horn only had 1, if I'm not mistaken.
It was against Auburn. Do you know who graded out higher all 3 years at South Carolina between J.C. Horn and McComu?
You're not going to surprise me here.
That's why I think it's so. Again, it's not to take away from J.C. Horn. It's to say, how did McComu fall this far? And maybe we're missing something here. And I've reached out to a couple of different people about, hey, is there an off the field issue? Is there something like that? And what I was told, Landon, is no, it's actually the opposite. He was one of the leaders on that team. Yeah, he's one of the leaders on that team. I believe a couple of the players told Dave Brugler that he was one of the culture changers in South Carolina. So it's got to just be a scheme fit. But I guess I am encouraged because I do see a scenario in a way that McComu can be a fun part of this defense. I guess quicker than Nashon Wright. If you swap them for me and you called Nashon Wright the 6th round pick and McComu picked 99, I'm excited. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Honestly, I mean, if you told me that McComu got picked at 99 and I went back and watched his tape, I would have told you they got a steal at 99. He's that good. I mean, he's a really good player, and he played in the SEC against the top competition. He didn't have any problems, man. I don't know. Like, I think I like that they went out and got 2 SEC corners. To me, that, even on a shortened season, even if they didn't have a ton of experience this year, you're playing against the one league where they've got NFL caliber wide receivers in it in several different teams. And I think that gives you the kind of pre-experience you need to get ready for the NFL. I'm super high on McComu as clearly you are as well. I'm super fascinated to see where he ends up. And I honestly, again, I don't know that I've watched a 6th-round player that we've drafted that I had never really heard of previous to this, where I was so surprised by how good their tape was, and that they're really, and that all my investigation, I can't find a good reason as to why he fell to the 6th round.
The Cowboys now have the 2 tallest cornerbacks in NFL history in Israel McCool and Nashon Wright, and they drafted them in the same year. It's got to count for something. Overall, I mean, I like the Cowboys just throwing a lot of darts at the cornerback position, especially if the plan is just to cycle these guys in and out. I'm really hoping that the Cowboys treat this as, hey, let's let the best man win, and not, hey, you were drafted higher, so we have to play you over, because I do think Mukamu can help this team right away. That is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, you can download and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audacity, wherever you get your podcasts. Continue to support us on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. You can follow Landon at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you next time.